What? This can't be right. Can it? This is crazy! How could they ask this much for a Buick? I promise I'll stop yelling if you just stop asking me for so much money. It's okay. Cars they're just expensive now. This is just how much it costs. Okay, now that I've progressed through the 5 stages of grief, let me introduce you to this, a $60,000 Buick. More specifically, this is the all-new 2018 Buick Enclave Avenir, with Avenir, of course, being the French word for expensive. Now, this model, as it sits here, is just a hair under $60,000, and it's not even fully loaded. If you check every option box, you can get an Enclave Avenir up to $65,000. Said another way, you could buy a regular Enclave and an Encore for the price of a fully loaded Enclave Avenir. For that kind of money, you'd expect the Avenir trim to have some exclusive features, and it does. I've compiled a list here of all the bells and whistles you can only get if you spring for the Avenir trim, and I'm going to read them off for you. You get an 8-inch LCD cluster display, a leather and wood steering wheel, wireless phone charging, embroidered floor mats, and that's it. Everything else you see here is either standard or available on lesser Enclave models. Apples to apples, you're paying $3,245 for those features, which is 13% of the base price of a Regal Sportback. You also don't get a whole lot in terms of unique exterior styling with the Avenir package. Changes are pretty much limited to this unique grille that's got these sticky outy things on it and some Avenir badging. The rest of this vehicle is just basic Enclave. There aren't a whole lot of changes. It's the same story under hood. Like all Enclaves, this has a 3.6 liter V6 with 310 horsepower and uses a 9-speed automatic transmission. And even though this is a fancy, expensive Avenir model, it still comes with front-wheel drive. If you want all-wheel drive, you're gonna have to pay extra. The interior of this Enclave Avenir certainly is nice, but I'm struggling to see why Buick thinks it's 60 grand nice. Now, the major components for a nice SUV are here. They've checked off a lot of big ticket items like leather seats, wood trim, a 360-degree cam, but this Enclave Avenir is just lacking in the details for a $60,000 vehicle. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is the gauge cluster in a $60,000 Buick Enclave Avenir. This is the gauge cluster in a $60,000 Volvo XC90 Inscription. These are the steering wheel controls in a $60,000 Buick Enclave Avenir. And these are the steering wheel controls in a $60,000 Range Rover Velar. These are the buttons in a $60,000 Buick Enclave Avenir. And these are the buttons in a 2014 Chevrolet Malibu. I think you get the picture. And there's more. Even though you spent $60,000 to get the Avenir package, Buick still gives you vinyl on the dash. It's not real leather. And they couldn't even manage to cover the whole thing. Only about a third of it's covered, and the rest is just black plastic. So it looks like you cheaped out on some option package, even though you spent $6 grand more on an Enclave than you would have a base Mercedes E-Class. But at least you've got embroidered floor mats, though only in the front. And what was Buick thinking when they designed these sunroofs? In pretty much everything these days, you can get a full-length panoramic sunroof, but in this, you just get a normal sunroof here, this big bar, and then a fixed piece of glass that doesn't open. Even these sunshades are manual. They're not power-operated in a $60,000 luxury SUV. Although Buick didn't exactly nail the Enclave Avenir's details, they did get space and comfort spot on. I've got plenty of room here. This is where I'd be driving, and I got plenty of leg room, and I can also adjust the backrest. And if I want more leg room, I can get that too. These seats are adjustable, and it's just, there's miles of leg and headroom back here. Third row passengers don't have it as good, but it's not that bad back here. I've got enough leg room, and as long as I sit up straight, I've got enough headroom. Buick included this cutout in the roof that's pretty high in the middle, but it slopes down quickly at the rear, so if you put your head back, you are gonna hit it. But I could spend a reasonable amount of time back here and not be too upset. I wouldn't want to spend a road trip back here, but you can actually use this for adults. Now, something strange, only the passenger side seat folds forward. This one only just slides forward, so you gotta use the passenger side if you really wanna use this third row. But as a nice perk, each side has their own USB port. Like most modern SUVs, the Enclave Avenir has a power-operated tailgate and reveals a generous cargo area. But if you need more space, the Enclave Avenir has power-operated third-row seats. They're not just power down, they also power back up. Now let's get this thing out on the road and see if it drives like a vehicle that's twice the price of an Audi Q3. I am now in control of $60,000 worth of Buick. And the first impression is it's just big and comfortable like you'd expect a Buick to be. This just irons out all the bumps like a proper Buick should. Steady state cruising, this car is really quiet. You don't get any engine noise, you don't get any road noise, and I can't really hear the cars passing by. But this engine's actually loud when you get into it. Even a little bit of throttle It's not like deafening engine sound, but it's a lot more than I thought I would get. I thought this would just be whisper quiet, and it's not. You get a lot more engine noise than I was expecting. All right, got an open stretch here, so let's give it the beans and see what she's got. It's pretty good. Obviously, this is not going to be fast, but it's quick enough. I don't think anybody's going to be wanting for more power. The 9-speed, it's pretty good. It's not the best out there. This is designed for comfort and kind of fuel economy, so it's not super willing to kick down, but paired with this engine, it's just fine. This is just enough acceleration for this kind of vehicle. The seats in this are comfortable. They're heated and ventilated, which is nice, especially on a hot day like today. We finally have one. I can use the cooled seats, but the armrest is strangely far away from me. If I put my arm naturally where it would fall, it kind of just falls in the crevice between the door and my seat. I wish this was over an inch or two more. It's kind of hard to get a comfortable position when I'm just cruising along here. Even though this is a unibody crossover, not a traditional body-on-frame SUV, it still feels massive. I can't even come close to touching the other side there, and the belt line comes up to my shoulder, so I'm kind of sunken down in this thing. It just feels big, but it does come with blind spot monitoring and a surround view camera, which does help with maneuverability. Now, this is going to be smaller than something like a Suburban or a Tahoe, so it's going to be easier to navigate in tight spaces than that, but there's also smaller options available if you just want 3 rows and not a huge vehicle. The GMC Acadia rides on this same platform, and it's got 3 rows of seat, but it's much shorter than this. So this is going to be more maneuverable than a traditional SUV, but don't think this is just going to be some small crossover. I actually like driving this Enclave Avenir. It's just a big, comfortable vehicle in the traditional sense of Buick. However, I don't think it feels like a $60,000 vehicle from where I'm sitting. I keep getting some strange noises from the AC. Some of the interior materials really don't feel up to that price point, and I don't have advanced features like a heads-up display. I've driven the new Volvo XC90 and the Audi Q7, and they just feel more premium than this. And believe it or not, the pricing's not that far off. This vehicle as it sits is about $60,000, and that's what Volvo charges for a top-level XC90 inscription. And the top-level Q70 isn't far off at $65,000. If Buick were to offer this at a discount, if this were in the low 50s and you could save $7,000 or $8,000 compared to those other vehicles, I think they'd really have a compelling case. But at 60, it's just hard to get over that mental hurdle of paying that much for a Buick. So there it is, the 2018 Enclave Avenir, the most expensive Buick money can buy. Now I know I've been tough on this poor little Enclave, but I actually like it. I think it drives well, it's comfortable, and I think the styling's interesting. I just don't $60,000 like it. When you price a vehicle like that and you put it in some stiff competition, for similar money, you can get a comparable Volvo XC90 or Audi Q7, and those are simply better vehicles with more luxury and greater attention to detail. Not to mention you don't have to deal with a Verano loaner car. But I can see what Buick's trying to do with this Avenir line. They're really trying to push the brand upscale. I just think they're being too aggressive with it. I'm not sure how many people out there are willing to spend this kind of money on a Buick when there's established luxury brands already out there. Now, if you look at the first generation Enclave, it topped out at about $46,000, which is $52,000 in today's money, which is where this one probably should be. That price point wouldn't put me into the 5 stages of grief and might even put more people in Buick showrooms.